Perfect. Okay. Hey, did you have to go live?
Yeah, that's what I did, and then I could send you the invite. First time I've
Okay.
ever done two people at once. So,
Yeah, usually I do with the person in the bottom of the screen, so next time I'll know you have to go live first. Well, hello and welcome to Soul Sessions podcast. I have my friend Hank Satella here today with us. Very excited to have this chat today.
yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, I'm
Mm,
loving the Hawaiian shirt as well.
Thanks. No, I'm addicted to them now. I have like all. That's all I wear.
Oh,
That
yeah.
and then my fedora when it's not too hot. I love wearing my nice hat.
Love it. Love it. Well, I'm going to give you a little intro for everybody so they can get to know you a little bit more. So you are a ordained reverend, fourth level priest of, I hope I say this right, okay, of the Paucao Kuna tradition in Peru.
Paco Kuna, close.
Okay. Reiki master and root worker in Hoodoo. Is that right?
That is correct.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to talk to you about that more as well. And some of your modalities, you're known as a sonic shaman. So you do sound healing and crystal healing, aromatherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, a Peruvian shaman, and Sansei. I think that's how you say it.
Yep, that's about everything. Well, I mean, there's a lot more, but those are like the highlights.
Yes. You do have a lot of titles.
Yeah, and people like us, you always have to learn something new. You can't just stay static. It's always about learning the next tool, even if you only use one little thing, like just broadening your knowledge base and all that.
Absolutely. You seem like you're also a seeker of knowledge and wisdom. And same, I feel like I'm always on to the next thing. Like, so what are you learning right now? What is new for you?
Sansei is really the new thing. I did a first level training, so I'm considered an apista, which is someone who helps someone doing like mediumship work.
Mhm.
And then later this month, I'm going to get my first level initiation into that tradition.
Amazing, amazing. Good morning to everyone. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So I guess where we start is I would love if you could tell everybody a little bit about your spiritual awakening journey.
Well, I would call myself a natural intuitive, and just since I'm a sonic shaman, we'll just get a little bowl going too while I talk
Yes.
here. But so I had a near-death experience as a child, like during childbirth. My mom had a near-death experience. She saw her grandma and a man she didn't know, and then afterwards found out it was my dad's grandpa, who she never met before. And through journey work afterwards, I went back and I saw how I was dead, but like came back, or something happened when I was born too. And so I've always had this natural intuitive knack, just knowing how to handle people. And I didn't know everybody wasn't like that.
Oh, yeah.
But what happened is in high school, when the social pressures get a lot and your empathic abilities are heightening and everything,
Mm-hmm.
it was really overwhelming. And I tried to medicate my gift with alcohol, which did not work. But for many years, I was a professional drinker, getting sober in 2006, and I've been sober since. And like on my 1 year sobriety date, I did a 12-step weekend. I went to Neil Donald Walsh's Happier Than God workshop. I found Fellowships of the Spirit and started my training as a Reiki master and going through their ordination program and metaphysician program. And then it was just like getting in the slingshot and going, off I go. And it's been a upward ride ever since.
That's beautiful. Do you feel like there's a lot of empaths and intuitives that don't necessarily know that they have those gifts right out the bat, and so it causes some disruption in their life?
Well, that, and we don't give our kids any tools at a young age. Like in Peru, there's two things that happen on a baby's first born. One is that they are given a soul retrieval for being cut from the mother.
Oh, could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so and that was like the second part, the one I really wanted to get to. But okay, so soul retrieval is if some of your vital essence is left behind because of a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think it's an actual soul part. I feel it's more like vital essence of this incarnation, or however you want to look at it. But as soon as you're cut from the mother, that's like the first trauma. Trauma is your birth is the first trauma really that impacts you as a child.
I never really thought of that as trauma before.
Yeah,
That's very
because but
interesting that it is.
you're all comfortable and everything. You just get spit out into this cold world. You have a doctor smacking you, and like all of
Yeah.
a sudden the world that you knew is gone, and you're in a completely different environment. And so like they look at that as the first trauma. So there's a whole soul retrieval process to call that energy back and put it into the baby. And then the other thing they do is right where the navel is. It's our connection to Mother Earth, and there's 5 energy centers called nawis. They're like eyes of energy that open and close like a dilating camera lens or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. And they regulate the nawi at the Cusco because that's where you're bringing in information from your surroundings, so the baby's not overwhelmed. And they actually say that the children of the North walk around with leaking navels because when we're born, there's no regulation that occurs at these energy centers. And that's why, especially here, we have so many empaths on steroids because they've been wide open, no teaching, no training, none of that type of thing. And then they're just really potent abilities without a framework to use it. And for anybody who identifies with being an empath, the main thing that sticks you is the judgment about what you're aware of. It's not what you're aware of;
Yeah,
it's judging what you're aware of. That's what makes it a polarity and a solidity for you. But if it's just data, like on your smartphone, it doesn't judge your phone numbers or your web addresses. It doesn't care what apps you have. It's just raw data. If an empath can look at what they're aware of just like that, it takes all the charge off, and then it's a superpower, really, instead of a curse.
absolutely. I love that you said that. It's a gift once you learn how to
Mm-hmm.
like harness it and manage your energy. So when you're coming across people, do you feel like for empaths and intuitives are kind of like new to their gifts, not new, but kind of like recognizing that their energy bodies are too open?
Yeah, they're recognizing that they have no regulation, they're overwhelmed, and like they think that they identify what they're aware of oftentimes with their own emotions instead of recognizing it's somebody else. And so they think they always have stuff going on, but only like 1% of that is actually them, and the rest is all this other people, places, and things. And once you can get rid of that through different energy processes or even just walking on the earth is a great way to get rid of heavy energy. You
Mm-hmm.
can you can have a lot more peace and ease.
Absolutely. Lucy said, yes, I can relate to this. I think that comes across a lot of times as, oh, you're too sensitive. You overthink things.
Yeah, grow a thicker skin, and then the body will be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's grow a thicker skin. Let's see if that helps because the body just wants to do what you're told. And a lot of that, it just really then compounds upon itself.
Mm-hmm. I have been around people that really aren't. I think everybody's really empathic. It's just like how tapped in you are to that
Mm-hmm.
or how much you want to like get it harnessed. But I've been around people that are not really deep into their empathic intuitive gifts, and it's vastly different the experience with somebody that's intuitive and empathic.
Yeah, my friend, he used to teach a class called empathic empowerment training. He showed it on a bell curve like that,
Mm-hmm.
and on the far right are the people like the saints and like schizophrenics, perhaps even that are aware multiple realities and different things. And then on the far left is like the super narcissists. But
Yep.
everybody's got it to some degree. But like depending on how much or little, it really impacts behavior or whatnot.
Oracle said meditation helps people isolate their own inner voice and separate the other influences. Yes, finding your own homeostasis point.
Yeah.
I used to work in mental health, and I was around some people that had, like schizophrenia and those type of disorders. And then you get to thinking, like, is that a disorder, or and I'm not a medical doctor, but is it they're just super, super tapped into things that normal society doesn't like see or perceive?
And that's the thing. Like when it comes to empath, it's not just people's feelings. You're picking up on thoughts, and then if you think of it like
Mm-hmm.
like most people have AM and FM, but then other people pick up broadband and ultraviolet and all these other things. So like people who are schizophrenic, I use the term portal sometimes. That sometimes they're so connected that they act like a portal and like realities bleed. And that's one reason. Like without tools to distinguish like where you're at, like it can be overwhelming.
That is so interesting with the portals. I'm going to really sit with that because it makes a lot of sense that they're accessing different,
Mm-hmm.
maybe dimensional spaces and blending them and not causing separation.
That also applies to like people who always have ghost stuff going on. They may be a portal and things are coming through, and then they're like, "Oh, I'll hang out here. This person can sense me. That's kind of cool." And
Yep.
so
Oh,
you'll
you
you'll
can see
find
me?
you find people like having all kinds of entities and things, and it's like learning that the portals being a gift too, because they have the capacity to like uh, have spirits move on too. But it's like just like the empath thing, it's a gift that you have to learn how to best use.
Are there any times in your journey that you felt like you were a little wacky because you could sense other frequencies and other dimensional spaces and things like that?
No, not because of that. Like, well, I guess in school, like they called me Double Boy and stuff like that because like one of my art projects was making rune stones, and then the art teacher started calling me Double Boy, and that spread like wildfire.
Wait,
But the,
the teacher called you that?
the teacher called me that.
Oh
She's
my
like, "Oh,
God.
are you
How
making your devil
traumatic.
stones?" And I'm like, but like no one messed with me in high school though, so that was a positive.
Oh, that's good. Oh, still, wow, okay.
Yeah, they thought I was out there, but no one wanted to do anything.
Because you were making moonstones?
rune stones, like the
Oh,
divination tool.
rune stone. Oh,
Yeah.
runes. Oh, okay. And they were like, oh, he's making some like whatever. Okay.
Well, that, and there was like a hilarious story. There was like this real big jock in the school, and at the time I
Hmm.
worked at a gas station, and in my pocket I had one of those telescoping magnets. And
Hmm.
I took the clip from the shirt, I put it on the desk, and I had the magnet underneath, and I'm spinning it, and I'm sitting there looking like I'm like focusing on like telekinesis, and I'm making it spin like this, and he jumps up in the middle of class like truly terrified, pointing his
Yeah, yeah.
finger at me and going, "He is a devil worshiper."
Oh my gosh. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like things are progressing with people and their gifts, like being more accepted now?
Definitely that. And I think a lot of people that wouldn't have woken up normally woke up because of COVID. Because like
Oh yeah.
COVID was a huge, what we would call an NLP, an interrupt. Everybody's going on their routines, they got their normal things, and then all of a sudden they're thrown out of that. And I'm just sitting at home, me, myself, and my soul, and that's it.
Hmm.
And with taken out of all that rhythmic, monotony, all of a sudden they're like, oh, we don't know what there is, but there's something. Because I noticed at
Hmm.
the metaphysical shop that I work that I'm affiliated with, they were like tripled in business. And then
Oh yeah.
one of my rock suppliers, wholesale suppliers, they used to have like 3 employees and that was it. And now they had like 20 employees and they're constantly running around shipping out orders all around the country. Their business like quintupled. And so like people just woke up and they just started seeking. They may not know what exactly they're seeking yet, but there's like
Hmm.
this huge movement right now.
I think that's great. I feel like my son is also very intuitive and very empathic, and he's very gifted. And so it's like I feel like is more free to be himself than I was when I was his age.
Definitely. Like
Yeah.
just with our kids, even like I can just see how much of a different blueprint we're giving them for life than what I was given. Because my dad was very conservative and like across the board, like there was like he was even the president of our church, so I'm closest thing to a minister's son, but you can get to without your dad being a minister. And everything was just so strict and regimented in terms of like right and wrong and all that kind of stuff. And the acceptance of like even Dungeons and Dragons, like they didn't like me playing that because that's the work of the devil. And like what a different world we live in now.
Yep. Yeah, I had a Southern Baptist pastor who raised me, and also my grandfather. So he was like way far back. And like Harry Potter was like a no, anything like that. Sabrina the Teenage
Oh
Witch,
yeah,
'cause, that was like the devil stuff. But now my son's just like whatever. Like I encourage that now. So
really really nice.
what would you say for empaths and for intuitives? What would be the best thing to help them like get in touch with themselves or protect themselves or learn how to kind of create boundaries between what's theirs and what's others?
Well, for one, like I would not encourage protection. Only protection for only moments of blindsiding. Depending where you're at, you may or may not need it. But at the end of the day, everything is source, and what you resist persists. So anything you're protecting yourself again,
Ooh.
the universe is actually recognizing that as, oh, you're paying attention to this. This must be something that you want more of. It doesn't understand no or whatever. So protection, I look at as if you're in a burning building and you take a blanket, you put water on it, you put it around yourself, you get out of the building, and then you take the blanket off. So use it for when you get blindsided, but not like walking around shielded or whatnot. But one of the biggest tools is from Access Consciousness. They call it "Who does this belong to?" And
Mm-hmm.
99% of what you are aware of is somebody else's. And so just taking the moment to say, who does this belong to? And sending it back to sender or whatever the case, or give it to the earth. I always like giving stuff like that to the earth because people don't know that they're flinging all this stuff out. You're just receiving it. It's not like they're sending it out maliciously. So just acknowledge it and then move it.
I
And if
love
you
that.
and if you do that practice like for 3 days solid, there's even an app you can download for free called "Who Does This Belong To?" And every like 30 seconds or every 5 minutes throughout the day, it's like bing, and it's just your moment to, hey, I'm going to stop. Who does this belong to? I'm going to go ahead and move it on, and that gives a lot of energy regulation to empaths.
I love that. I'm gonna read a couple of these comments here. It said a lot of young kids have spiritual parents to support them now. We love that.
Mm-hmm.
um, So with the return to sender, when I first was on my like empathic intuitive journey, there was a lot of like spiritual teachers that were saying, oh, return that back to whomever, like negative energy. And then when I got further into it, I was like, I don't want to send that out
Right.
because it's coming, like we're all source, so it's coming right back to me. So
Yeah.
let's transmute that. And like you said, ask the earth to take
Yeah,
it.
that's one reason I started getting away from that tool. But then, like, you could also add if you did return to sender with consciousness, return to sender with healing. So then it's not just going back as
Oh,
it was, you're adding your contribution back to them. But if you want to be under the radar, because a lot of empaths want to be invisible, then don't do that because you're like pinging them energetically. They might think about you, you know, so then give it to the earth. So whatever's going to create more. That's really the question to be. What would create the most right now with this energy? Giving it to
mm-hmm.
the earth, giving it to a guide, giving it to the person, giving it to a different person, and kind of following your knowing instead.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think especially because the earth is like moving in frequencies right now, that would be very helpful as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
Yeah. So with the Reiki, what drew you to Reiki? Because I love Reiki myself.
Oh, so I actually even have this is a cool crystal to show you. This is the first crystal I ever got in my life,
That's
and I
beautiful.
was, and I had just I forget somewhere between high school and college in those years or whatnot. My aunt had taken me to a psychic store, Goddess Elite, where I'm still affiliated with today, and they had a psychic fair. And I had at the time I was doing irrigation work, and I had really hurt my back. And she said, "Let me buy you a Reiki session." And I'm like, I don't know
How
about
old were you?
I was probably 18, between 18 and 22,
Okay.
somewhere in there. Like I was always metaphysical, being intuitive and things, but I didn't have a construct about chakras or any esoteric teachings at that point. But she takes me to the psychic fair, buys me a Reiki session, and my back felt better. And I'm like, oh, that's great, you know. And then I went on. Well, I also from that day, from getting the session, I won this crystal. So that was also like my first
What
thing.
kind of crystal is that?
It's just clear quartz with a double
Clear
point.
quartz? Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. What a great crystal have for your first
Oh
one.
yeah, so that became my master crystal for my Reiki grid or whatnot. But because like that was kind of like just kind of a notch in the back of my mind about wow, Reiki's cool. I should like
Mm-hmm.
look into that someday. And she also got me affiliated with Lilydale. She told me about this place in New York where it's all spiritualists, and
Mm-hmm.
spiritualists are all mediums basically. And when I got sober, I ended up learning Reiki. That was in 2006. So I went through Reiki level 1 through master, spiritual insight training 1 and 2, all within 4 months, had a crisis healing. And then in the 2 year program that I joined, I just learned everything else that I could. So in addition to them flying in teachers from around the world that are like the best of the best, like Roger Payne for Qigong, Sharon Klingler for mediumship, all kinds of different people. I also was taking everything else I could, like NLP, medical intuition, vibrational medicine with Patty Conklin. I even learned about sweat lodges. I could with like Lakota, Ed McGaw, and things like that. So I just learned everything that I could, and then I just kept going with it.
So you're just soaking it all in.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm
um,
a master blender, and there's something in our tradition. We believe that wherever you were physically born, there's a feminine and masculine spirit of your birthplace that holds the blueprint for the perfect you. And I was born in Pittsburgh, in between the rivers, where two rivers come together, and I have this natural ability to just take little snippets from all these different things blended to make something different with it.
I love that. I love meeting healers that just kind of like blend everything into their own modality. Oracle Secret says things that come to you on their own accord have great power.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's a
Um,
thing too. Like when I think Reiki is just like you get used to some hand motions until your intuition kicks in. Because like
mhm.
Dr. Azui, when it first started, all those hand positions that was really westernized. He would teach people just to scan first, put your hands there. The positions came after if you didn't get a hit, and some of the original positions even included holding the tongue. But you
Oh
can
yeah. Okay.
that would not go over in the West. So like it got really westernized and got Christianized a lot as it evolved with good measure though, because like that's why it's so well accepted here. Even the Cleveland Clinic offers Reiki before and after sessions, or not sessions, surgeries.
I love that. Oh, after surgeries, like a physical
Yeah, yeah,
surgery.
it's like they have volunteers, and you can sign up and have Reiki done in your room, or before and after you have a surgery, or if you're in the hospital for a long time, they do that. They actually did a double-blind placebo study where they had fake Reiki practitioners and
Yeah.
real Reiki practitioners. They would do blood draws. They have like the monitors on them, and just to see, and they don't know exactly why it happens or what's happening, but they're able to show that Reiki's doing something
That's
through the
beautiful.
studies.
Like how how
Science is
beautiful
finally
that is
catching
good.
up, you know.
Right. With your NLP, can you talk about that a little bit or tell people more what NLP is? I know it's a little more popularized
Yeah.
now. One of my favorite
Well,
things. But
I Well, and I only use very limited things from NLP. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and the main thing that I use it for is in client communication when you pick up on people's cues of how they receive information. Like if someone's saying, I see what you're talking about, they're a visual person. I hear you, you know, they're audio. Ah, man, I'm feeling your vibe, that they're kinesthetic. And so your word choice using audio cues, visual cues helps to build rapport and connection with people. And then the other main thing that I use NLP for is anchor collapsing. And so there's a process where you put them in a meditative state and you're setting this finger is going to be the time you felt the most love, the time you felt the most accepted, the time you felt the most confident, and so on. This one bridges all of them together. This is a bailout anchor. This may be joy. And then this one is the trauma that you're releasing. So but one lady in our class that he used as a demonstration had been at 9/11 and couldn't even talk about the day. She was so traumatized by it. So he did this to 9/11, and then you hit the one that blends them all together and the negative one, and it brings back both states of being at once. And the four good states of being collapses the bad state of being and gives them more ease around it. So that's what they call it, anchor collapsing.
Interesting. I had never heard of that before. I'm going to have to talk to you more about that on the side.
Because NLP is usually used more for sales, honestly. And like that's how you walk into a car dealership and they just have to figure out, do I need to tell this person about it? Do I need to show them a brochure? Do I need to get them behind the wheel so they can feel how it is? And that's why they're very good at selling you things.
Okay, so how much power do you think your words have?
A lot.
Yes. I think people underestimate their languaging and what they're saying over their life and speaking over their life.
And the thing is that words represent energies, and you might use the wrong word but have the right energy intention and you're fine. But if you're using them unconsciously, then the collective consciousness of around a word takes precedence. And to give an example, in 1943, a lot of our definitions changed. And prior, like if you look at the word want, it means lack. Like think rich people want for nothing. Rich people lack for nothing. So if you say I want money, what are you saying? I lack money. Universe, I want money. You're actually squeezing the sponge and pushing it further away. The better question would be like, what energy could I be? What choices could I make to bring more money into my life? And what would it take to receive that? Because asking for it's one thing, the willingness to receive it is another.
I used to be in a lot of lack mentality because that's how I grew up with everyone around me. And now that I am in a different space, I can look at the languaging that I used to have and say, wow, like I could definitely see how that was like continuing that cycle to keep going.
And on my side, we did have someone saying, good morning, beautiful people, and saying that, can anyone do Reiki? Absolutely. You just find there are ways to get tuned in nature as well, but you find somebody.
Ooh, you want to talk about that a little bit? I would love. I would love to.
Well, I mean, like just like if you're in nature and you're by a waterfall, and the waterfall energetically is teaching you how to cleanse energy and things of that nature, like being out in nature is imprinting you with these different frequencies that are naturally present and activating them within you. Because that's all Reiki is. It's like somebody who's been awakened that they have this frequency and they're passing it on. So it's just like plucking a string on a guitar. Or I had an example from my high school choir class where the lady, she had one of those little note checkers so everybody hits the same note when they start talking or singing rather. And so we were all singing the same note for over and over again, maybe 5 minutes. And when she gave us the sign to stop, we were quiet, but we heard the note we were singing. The piano had started to resonate at the same note that we were singing. So like when somebody has a vibration and they're intentionally like plucking your string, if you want to think of it that way, then it goes from one person to the other. And even in shamanism, we have a similar thing. It's called a karpai, which just means sacred exchange. And the teacher would go up to the student and they would just put foreheads together and you're just allowing the flow of information. You're getting the seed of their knowledge, but it's up to you to cultivate that seed. So the attunement's the beginning process, but as anyone who's taken Reiki realizes, like you have a lot of change and then the Reiki unfolds, which is why we have so many kinds of Reiki. My God,
so many different
thousands, because everybody gets that awakening. And then they're like, oh, and they find out these new things and then they make their own thing. Reiki is all healing, really. If Reiki was discovered in Peru, it would have been called Kanchai. It just was like, following your intuition with energy through the lens of Japan. And so I look at it that way, like all healing work essentially is coming down to being present for whatever energy needs to flow. That's what Reiki is. So regardless of traditions, yeah.
I think it's great. And I tell people all the time, like everyone can do Reiki, please.
Yeah, it would be a wonderful world if we did do that.
I got attuned to Kundalini Reiki, but like as it unfolded for me, I started like pulling from all different areas of life, like
Hmm.
nature, different realms, like the unicorn and fairy realms and things like that. So it doesn't have to be like one specific thing for you. It can be like a blend.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like when you go to learn from somebody, it's almost like you're picking the teacher, not just the modality, because that
Yep.
teacher has a very unique thing, even between sound teachers. Like I've trained with Dr. John Boyu, who's my favorite. He's the author of Human Tuning, and he's like kind of the godfather of tuning forks. But then there's also David Holtz, who did Soul Energetics, and all kinds of people who are just amazing sound healers, but everybody has their own vibe. And they only
Yep.
focus on like one set. Like I have 700 forks. I'm a little addicted.
That's a lot of tuning
Yeah,
forks.
I have like 700 forks. I have 21 crystal bowls. I have one gong now, but I'm getting five more for when my new office opens.
Wow. Okay. So with
You'll
your
have to come up to
forks,
Cleveland and hang out and get some sound healing.
I would love to. I love sound healing so much, and that would be amazing. So with your forks, so you have 700 different tuning
Yeah.
forks. So do you like know all of them on like an individual basis? You know how like when we
Uh,
have tools that we work with, they're really their own consciousness forms. So
yeah, I mean, I intuitively use them, but I've used all of them enough to know what their medicine is. Like Fibonacci tones, for example, are very good for people with addictions. It's like giving them a lifeline to source to pull themselves out. And then solar harmonic is good for physical things. Solfeggio is more like interdimensional. Then you have like I have 3 or 4 octaves of planet frequencies because I love the planets and also asteroids. There's organ forks, there's meridian forks, Kabbalah forks, archangel forks. There's a lot of forks.
that's amazing. I didn't even know there were that many type of forks.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing like that TikTok song going on, Animaniacs, where the guy's doing the countries. I thought maybe I could
Yeah,
do
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, but I'll go over tuning forks and let's sing all the tuning
You
forks
should
to it.
definitely do that. I love that video. If anybody hasn't seen that, you should definitely look up the countries and the Animaniacs video. That would be fun. So how did you find your sound healing teacher?
Well,
How did that come to be?
well, I'm kind of self-taught for the most part, though I have had
Mm-hmm.
2 in-person trainings. I when I was going through fellowships, I felt that most of the stuff that we were getting focused mostly on spiritual, mental, and emotional, not much for physical things. So I
Mm-hmm.
was looking for some sort of modality that if someone comes in, they just have a backache, I have something for them. And I found 2 things. One was sound healing, though at the time the teacher only taught it as it related to the chakras, and there was no physical stuff. So I kind of shelved it at first. I didn't really use them as much because I wanted something for the physical healing, and I became an aromatherapist. And between those two, there's also a lot of science behind them. With aromatherapy, there's been a whole bunch of studies and clinical things that show that the oils actually do something. That in the pharmaceutical companies, they use oils to make the drugs. Like
Mm-hmm.
cough suppressant comes from oils and all kinds of different things. Um, and then I found from Dr. John Boyu the science behind the sound, where it talks about like if you have a healthy or unhealthy organ, if you have the frequency of a healthy organ and send it through the body, it helps that organ come into sympathetic resonance and heal. And so like that was part of the science behind it. And then acoustic levitation, you'll love this. So
That sounds interesting.
so so like if every time a sound wave crosses, it creates a node, which is a still point. And in
Okay.
that still point, one's subject to harmonics. Like if you could float water, literally, they do this in laboratories where they have the sound waves going and they just put a drop of water and it's just floating there in the node of the still point with the frequency going. Then they subject it to harmonics. And the water will start to spin 2 pointed star, 3 pointed star, 10 pointed star, 12 pointed star. So it's like sound healing causes sacred geometry in the water molecules of your body.
That's amazing.
And so it's bridging from like you can talk about resonance and things like that, and that's like scientific. But now like when you talk about the acoustic levitation part, it's starting to bridge into metaphysics because that's where we have like the interdimensional healings and past life stuff going on and healing the energy centers, and it really bridges all into this unseen world.
You're really healing like the cells and everything, like in your physical
Mm-hmm.
body, not only like soul and energy, but physical,
Yeah.
completely changing the restructuring of your system. Oracle Secrets asks, are you starting a fork store?
No, I do. I have a web store. Holistichealthandhealing.net is my web store where I sell aromatherapy and tuning forks. And I'm a Metavibe distributor. Metavibe is made in the United States. They're out of Chicago. And so everything is made. And then the forks are all 99.9% aluminum. And they have these really long handles. That's one reason I love Metavibe. Some fork manufacturers, the handles are like this big.
Mm-hmm.
But you have these long ones. You can put an O-ring on it if you want. So you have like, could use it as a pendulum. So
Nice.
they're just a much nicer fork in my opinion. I am a little biased since I so much.
So is Metavibe the maker of the tuning forks?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Can you talk about your shamanism a little bit?
Yeah. So I practice
And
it.
hoodoo. I would love to hear about both of those.
Well, and they blend really well together. So like
Yep.
I do the Paco Kuna tradition of Peru. This is my Misha, which is like a medicine bundle with different stones in it. And basically, just to clarify too, the word shaman refers to one particular tribe in the Siberian region of Russia, the Tungus
Mhm.
tribe. And anthropologists, when they were doing their thing, they basically said, well, all native traditions are going to just roll up under this one term, shamanism. So today it's an umbrella word. And with neo shamanism, there's people that have, like, they're working with nature, they're calling themselves a shaman, but they haven't had any sort of lineage training. So like
Mhm.
when if someone says they're a shaman, it's like important. Well, ask questions. Well, what is your lineage? What is your tradition? And not to say that neo shamanism is any lesser than, you just want to know what you're getting if you're
Mhm.
looking for a shaman or whatnot. Paco means nature mystic, and the tradition that I practice specifically, it's called Katari, which means like your unique voice in this world, or the winged serpent, depending on the translation. And the tradition came; it's a blending of the Carol tradition from way up in the mountains, where when the Spanish were in, the altitude was so high they could not go up and conquer those people. They just left them alone
Okay.
because they were so high up they just couldn't go. And so like the Inkari tradition, the world tradition of this of what I practice, was saved up in the mountains and was discovered by Don Humberto, I forget his last name. He was in Cusco and saw somebody with these cloths that they haven't been woven like this for like hundreds of years. Where are you
Mhm.
from? And found these collections of Indians that were living way up high in the mountains, and did an exhibition to go and talk to them, and that the knowledge started coming back down. And then we blended it with like the coastal traditions where there was a little bit more Spanish influence. So what I practice is cross-cultural. It's a whole bunch of Peruvian shamanism practiced together, but it's all Peruvian shamanism with lineages and that type of thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. So how does that come across when you're healing someone? Like
Yeah, so
what aspects? Because I know you're saying that you work in with the nature spirits a lot.
yeah, so like the main thing, well, one, uh, all shamans kind of walk between worlds, and the idea is you meet the person where they're at. So they're energetically, they're coming in, and you might be dealing with someone with this more third level where they're believing in good and evil, or fourth level where they understand that on the grand scheme of things there's not good and evil, there's just these polarities and different things. And depending where they're at, like you would, like someone that's really stuck in fear, I might do hoodoo for them, and I might make them a
Mm-hmm.
mojo bag and give that to them, give them a talisman to take out to kind of hold the space. Someone who's fourth level wouldn't need that. So you really cater and meet people where they're at to customize it. And the one thing I do with clients the first time every time are two things. One, call in the spirits of their birthplace, their itopu and their pakarina, because that holds the blueprint for the perfected them. So the idea is, in order to get here, we had to forget who we are, and the blueprint of
Mm-hmm.
who we are, to kind of like the instruction manual to get back to yourself, is held outside of this reality. You're born. The moment the crown heads, you have the inspiration from your Wilka Nuna Cheska, which is your sacred soul star. And that's why identical twins could be different. They had different stars.
Okay.
So the body's the same, the spirit is different.
Yep.
Okay, and so like when right before we start, I always call in all the elements: Pachamama for the earth, Mama Unu for the water, Mama Kia for the moon, Wulka Waira for the sacred wind, Inti Taita for the sun, Quichi, which is the rainbow, their Yanapak, which is their particular band of spirit guides, and
Mm-hmm.
then their Wilka Nuna Cheska. I go, Iya Wilka Nuna Cheska Muhukoya Quichi Katari, which means first ray from my soul star, illuminate the divine seed within, allow rise to my unique voice or rainbow serpent. And so even if we do nothing else, I've given them the imprint that the things that don't belong in their life are going to start shimmying to the top a lot faster, because just like an attunement, we've given them this frequency. This is what the healthy you feels like. Where does
Mm-hmm.
not fit for you anymore? And then, working with them to step into their uniqueness more, because that's, everybody has a medicine for this world, and that medicine is to be uniquely you. And that means you got to get over other people's judgments, and you got to get
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in your own skin. You got to feel, that was a big thing for me. I never was in my body because of childhood trauma, so I was like totally out. And
Same.
being a
Just up
space
here.
cadet, and then like last year my one partner's working on me, and they're like, do you feel safe in your body? I'm like, no. I never had realized that before. And
Yeah.
then that whole process was like really healing the cellular memory, like where the body remembered the traumas. Like you could mentally get over stuff, but the trauma is still held in the body, and to release that through different energy techniques is a paramount importance.
Beautiful. I have three questions for you. Okay, so when you say somebody's birthplace, like calling that in, are you talking about their birthplace in this
Yes,
incarnation? Okay, in
where
this
they were
incarnation.
physically born.
Okay, where they're physically born.
Yep.
Okay.
And we believe
Okay.
that parents are just the genetic donation, but more importantly, they were
Yeah.
going to be in the right place at the right time for you to have the nature spirits that you're coming to have.
Interesting. I'm gonna call my own birthplace in next time I go into my records. That's very interesting. Okay, so my next question was the rainbow consciousness.
Okay.
You were talking about the elemental like spirits and then
Mm-hmm.
the sun and the moon. I've never really heard rainbows as
Well,
a consciousness form.
Queechee is the rainbow bridge if you think about it.
Hmm.
And it represents, so on the mesa it's kind of hard to describe. So at the north you have the wind, you have the earth, you have the water, you have sun. Along this divine diagonal, they call it, would be Quiche, and it's the bridge of consciousness. Right here we would have a piece on the mesa called the Nokani Inca, which is your embodiment piece. This is who you are.
Okay.
This represents going up into the divine. So you're going from the lower world to the middle world, where we're at right now in the center, and to
Got
the upper world. So Quiche represents rainbow, or a bridge. And if you know, like the symbol from Reiki, the Antakarana symbol,
Uh-huh.
like that was a Sanskrit word also meaning bridge, and was the original reference to the Tower of Babel, like the bridge of consciousness. So like when we're talking Quiche, it's about the rainbow. And what that's really about is, if you think of the ego as the prism of consciousness that allows to have an individual experience, right?
Hmm.
Then you have all these different qualities of energy that you're working with, that you're learning how to use the skilled and the unskilled application of each of these energies. Once you have all those balanced, you're able to take that rainbow and bring it together to manifest that pure divinity on the physical plane. So your body, your soul is like the prism, and then it's by doing our inner work, our shadow work, our healing work, we're bringing it back together to be able to use all those energies very coherently for healing, for the not just us but for everyone.
And that just opened up like a whole new
Yeah,
thing.
I'm sure this will be the first of many conversations, right?
Yeah, that was so interesting. Like I'm gonna sit with that for sure. Okay, so could you tell me a little bit more about hoodoo? I'm not very versed in that, and I'm sure a lot of other
Yeah.
people would love to hear.
So hoodoo means American folk magic, and depending where you are in the country, if you find a teacher and where they learn from, all of that is very specific to the region. Because basically,
Mm-hmm.
because of the slave trade, and slave trade was more than just Africa. There were people from Ireland and all kinds of places, from Russia. Like, there's all kinds of people sold into slavery. And when they hear and they don't have the herbs of their land anymore and things, the
Mm-hmm.
priests of all the different traditions, because there was all kinds of different influences in that trade, they put their knowledge together, and so there became a blending of the African tradition and the European tradition and the Indians, the Native American Indians, and it became a melting pot of knowledge. And so my
Mm-hmm.
particular hoodoo teacher, there's like you learn how to do a consecration altar for magical works. You learn what all the herbs do. In some traditions, you'll use the Psalms. Not all traditions, like some they may or may not use that, but it's like putting it all for purposes to do work for yourself, to create more ease in your life. The one rule is, like, you would never like use it to thwart somebody else's will. That's always been
Mm-hmm.
like a big rule. In fact, when if you were to do that in Africa, they have a thing that they would make, that they would give to the person who cast something wrongly, and it takes away your inhibitions, and you're gifted to the person that you wronged as like a
Oh,
circle or
interesting.
whatever. So like,
Okay.
but here that was all that they had to use against their oppressor. So like it kind of got it twisted a little bit, because now it's like, well, I'm sure people used it for bad anyway, but that's when it kind of got more broadly used for things other than just possibilities.
Okay. How did you get? How are you drawn to that? Because it seems like you're drawn to a lot of things that are like a blending
Yeah.
of modality
So
things.
during the shaman program, my teacher and I had missed something, because I forget what obligation I had. So we're at Goddess Elite after hours, and he's doing the work that I missed. And the lady who owned the store, she had an altar to a particular deity called Shango, which I think I have a statue for him. Yep. So this is Shango, the
Oh, nice. That's very
thunder and
powerful.
lightning god, and dances and everything. And on the table, like, Shango would like playing cards. So like one of the things you do with your altars, you might sit down and have a coffee with your spirits, and then throw some dice, play some cards, stuff like that. And right in front of me and Zane, the playing cards, three of them flipped up, like one, 2, 3, like no one touching them. These cards just flipped up and it was 2, 4, 8, so 3 octaves. And so sound heal, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then in my head I heard, work with me. And I'm like, okay.
Uh-huh.
But at the time they said they would teach me.
Mhm.
And so I was just learning on my own from the spirits for quite some time. But that's when Zane offered a hoodoo class, I took it because it was like a lot of ancestor work in hoodoo as well. They don't work with the orishas or any deities. It's all just ancestor work. And then the one day spirit came through and said, hey, you can go get a teacher now. And that same day Zane messaged me if I wanted to train to be his apista. So like the day that they say I could get a teacher is the day that he reached out. So it kind of, they say sometimes in that tradition, it chooses you and you don't choose it.
It loudly chose you.
Oh, yes. But it's a really, like Sansei is an Afro-Caribbean tradition, and it's a really old tradition. It's way more oral only. There's not a lot of books on it. And even the books that there are, they're not talking about a lot of the work because it's considered secret.
Okay. Oracle Secret said root workers are also traded working with Amish Hexminster, so even some Amish influence.
Yeah, it's literally a melting pot, and depending on your teacher, that's why like, if you learn hoodoo or you're initiated or something, if you went and got it with someone else and just learn more, you're going to continue just evolving. But it's really about just taking anything because you use what you got. You know, in shamanism too, I've raided a McDonald's condiments counter before to build a despacho. You know, despacho's type of an offering. So
okay,
like, I'm gonna get some sugar packets. I'm gonna get some of this. So ketchup, we could use that. You know, and you just use what you have. And the hoodoo is the same way. What ingredients do you have? And you would maybe have to talk to that plant. Hey, what can you do for me? Hey, I can help with get with people's anxiety. Like what lavender does for me magically might do something different for you. Because it's our two vibrations coming together that makes the medicine, not just one on its own.
So what does the session look like with you, Hank? So is it depending on like whoever comes and wherever they're at, and then you pull from all your different modalities and then offer that to the person?
Yeah, well, one thing, like on my website, I have a thing for a discovery call where like we can talk because going into just a session, I'd rather have a conversation with someone first, find out a little bit about them, so I kind of have a plan and we don't have to do as much discovery at the session. But like I said, I would normally do those 3 attunements. I normally would do like a general soul retrieval for whatever's ready to come back, and then I just start working energetically. Usually my target is to call in energies from each world, so the upper world, lower world, middle world, to balance the energy center. But once we get started, like it's almost half healing, half life coaching. So I might be working on them and talking about, okay, what happened at this age, what happened at that age. But if they have specific traumas, then we just go right for that to help reframe it and shift the energies for them.
Beautiful. So for your soul contracts, why do you think that you came in a religious, and this is not anything negative about religion, but why do you think that you came in that avenue and then now you're doing something that's very, like, I wouldn't say different, but just in a much different capacity?
Well, I just believe anytime it's just what the contrast for the soul, like it's whatever you chose for the contrast for the soul. And if you do have soul contracts, I believe they totally can be changed. There's one technique we call it a destiny retrieval, and you go and you renegotiate contracts and all that. But like the stance I have on contracts, like you made that agreement in this other ever moment of now place, and like now that I'm here, if something's more relevant to me, I still have choice. I don't have to fall through with those. You can break a contract, and I think point of view creates reality, and people who believe in soul contracts, that is very real for them. And there's other people that don't have that, and it's not real for them, and both are valid.
Agreed. And I always tell people, you can edit that stuff. You have free will over your own decisions.
Yeah, and there's a clearing from access to that. Like it's like all the binding and unbinding contracts, agreements, vows, oaths, communities, fealties, all that. Destroy, revoke, recant, rescind, destroy, and uncreate it all. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 9 shorts, boys, povads, and beyonds. Just breaking them all. No till death do us part stuff. That's like, like the moment is not static. So like you always want to leave yourself open to be able to change. And that's why a lot of relationships I feel don't work. You start with a relationship and everybody tries to keep it how it was and not allow it to become and change. And sometimes that change means those two people need separate pots, like you have to separate plants sometimes when they're growing together. And it's not a wrongness. People just change, but we make it a wrongness because we believe till death do us part and I'll go to hell and blah, blah, blah. And then it makes an unfortunate situation for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I have been through that myself. Okay. So I have some like round fire questions for you.
Round
If
fire?
up
Okay.
to, yeah, if you're up to answering them.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So what is the most important thing that you have learned this year?
Oh my gosh. That is a really big
So far.
question.
So far.
Oh, I mean, I really don't have a good answer for that. It's hard to isolate like something that I learned.
Okay. It's okay. Okay, I'll change the question. So, what do you think people can do to like help with their individual shifts and the collective shifts? Like those who are very mindful of like helping everybody raise their frequency,
Hmm.
right? So we can all shift as a whole. What can they do on an individual level and a collective level?
Do like just really take a deep dive into your shadow work. Like there's one program that I'm going to be relaunching. It's called As I Forgive Me, which is an acronym for a metaphysical approach to inner work, basically,
Okay.
because it's all the heaviness. Like you change yourself, you change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of creation is within you. I'm the only one in the room, and so are you. So it's like we're one and we're separate. But if you can just start not fragmenting yourself and showing up for your own experience and recognizing that since I am everyone, the fastest way to change the world is to change me. Taking that deep dive, that has the most change and impact. And if you don't know how to do that, then find a practitioner that can walk you through it.
Do you think that when we were talking about COVID earlier was causing a lot of people to see that within, even if they're
Mm-hmm.
not completely conscious of it yet?
Yeah, I
But
had an acronym for COVID. I hope you like it. It's creating opportunities via intuiting divinity.
nice. Okay. I
And
like
that's
that.
that's what people really they were waking up like they don't know what to do, but they're starting to work on themselves. They're realizing that
Yeah.
they're way more than this, puppet, this meat
Mm-hmm.
suit or whatever. And then as they start to get better, like it just has this multiplier effect. And that's where I think we're really striving towards now. And then the powers that be, the energies that are the tides going out is making a last push really to try to stay in
Mm-hmm.
power. And so that's what we're in right now.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the person said, we're seeing a lot of darkness in the world because there's so much light.
Yeah, it's illuminating it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely.
and for everyone too, like really, if you can come from the perspective that they're from the esoteric point of view that there's no right and wrong, and you can shift from making someone right or wrong to they just have an interesting point of view. We're taking a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that pushing out because for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and that people are fighting and they're doing all these things. But if instead of fighting, be like, your opinion is valid, it's just not my opinion, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not fighting them anymore, it creates a space for them to step into. And that if we can all do that and recognize, all truths are true, all truths are just not true for me, and with that mindset, having just allowance for everyone, because it's the resisting that's causing the friction that's making things stay the way they are. Allowance of one another is what's going to create the space for the shift to happen, and the earth to split if you believe in that, or whatever the case is.
I feel like I'm on that journey with my son. Like, my truth doesn't have to be your truth, and your truth doesn't have to be my
Yeah,
truth. He's coming into like teenage years. So, yeah.
yeah.
um, so if I'm out in public, right? And sometimes I'm very like hyper aware that everyone is me and
Yeah.
I'm everyone. So it's a lot easier to traverse. And then some days I'm more like in the 3D scape of things, right? And more intermeshed. What is your best advice to get people to kind of like detach from being so intermeshed in like the
Yeah.
situation?
Well, one thing you could do is if you have Florida water, you can put on yourself and just wipe it down. There's a technique that I can do for everybody right now. It's called Popo, which Popo means bubble. So it's like your aura. And you
Okay.
take 3 deep breaths, and with each breath, you're just pulling energy in from everywhere, and you're expanding your field. And you're taking a breath, pulling energy in, expanding your field. On the third breath, you retain and hold. And then we pop the Popo. So we burst the bubble, and all the taffy pulls of energy, all the little cords and all the things where you picked up other people's stuff, it just goes right back to wherever it came from, and it
Right.
just leaves you just your energy for a moment, and then the cords of love, of course, will reform, but all the trivial stuff that you're picking up will just go back to source, or not back to source, back to the people.
And what did you call it?
Pop the Popo, pop the bubble.
Okay, I'm going to do that next time I'm out and about. And I
Okay.
feel like I'm getting intermeshed.
Yep, do that, and also, is this mine? Or hand it back to the person, like
Yep.
physically take out any heaviness and put it back to the person if that feels light. But the big thing is that you're noticing. Like
Yeah,
that's the hard, no, number one thing. If you notice, not you can make a choice, but some people it's just a robot driving, and we go through all day, realize we're down and drawn down, and then we never took care of ourselves energetically that day because we're too busy, being in the world instead of the world.
that was me yesterday. I just felt kind of like weird and icky, and I was like, "Oh, is this mine or is this stuff that's being transmuted for the Lion's Gate?" And I said, "Oh yeah, so let me ground," and then I felt immediately better. I was like, "Oh yeah, none of that stuff was mine. That heavy, dense energy."
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. If okay, what chakra do you think that you embody the most? Like if you were just one old big one chakra, which one do you think it would be?
I would go with the heart.
Yeah, I thought you might say that.
Yeah, and the heart too. Like we have the belief in shamanism. You are the earth, and the earth is you, and and you are the love and
Mhm.
the space for people. And it's just a matter of refining your ability to hold that for people.
I love that. I love it. What advice would you give your younger self? Any
Stay the
younger self. It
course.
can be any moment.
Yeah, like
Oh, nice. Okay.
I because I wouldn't change anything from my past, so that's a kind of a tricky question. Because like, what would I tell myself? Because I
Yeah.
wouldn't want me to make a different choice that would take away from what
Sure.
if anything. It's well, even starting early, like the timing was so perfect, getting sober and everything that
Hmm.
maybe I would just give myself a hug in a key moment when I wanted to be supportive. That wouldn't change anything, but would just give me a little comfort from a childhood wound.
That is so sweet. I feel like sometimes, because I work with my younger versions a lot, like helping them heal through things that I feel like when I was younger, I could feel me now coming in to
Yeah,
offer support
I fully believe
back
because
then.
time is an illusion. Like all it
Yeah,
is coordinates for time space to find specific aspects of consciousness, but it's not an actual linearity at all.
absolutely,
It feels
absolutely.
like that. The stream of conscious feels linear, but it's not.
Okay, this one. Okay, so if there was a duel, okay,
A
and we
dual.
had Doctor Strange and we had Merlin the Wizard, who do you think would win that duel?
Well, I'm not familiar with Doctor Strange, but I do like Merlin.
Okay,
So I would go with Merlin. He's got lots of
go
tricks.
with Merlin.
Of
He does.
course.
He does. Okay, Hank. Where can everybody find you, and what do you have coming up?
I don't have much coming up because I'm in between offices. Like back in March, I let go of my old center space, and it
Hmm.
was my new place is supposed to be open March 1st, and it's still not open. So I'm hoping that by the end of the month, I'll actually be able to start having classes again. But my website
Nice.
is hanksutala.com, and my store site is holistichealthandhealing.net. Of course, here I am on TikTok, so please
Mhm.
follow me there and all that. What else? And I'm also
And then you
Sonic
have
Shaman.
YouTube, Facebook, and
Yep.
Instagram.
Yeah, I'm Sonic Shaman everywhere. So if you do Sonic Shaman, you'll see my face, and go ahead and send me like my page, send a friend request. If you're interested in a session, you can check those out on my website, and you can use the code ELITE, all capitals. It will knock 50% off your first session if you decide to get a session. And book a discovery call bare minimum. And the worst that could happen is you find out I'm not the healer for you. But there's a lot of things we can do, and I'm going to be relaunching my programs. Like I have my old programs, which are a combination of life coaching, healing work, a shamanic ceremony. I'm incorporating the As I Forgive Me program into all those. I'm gonna re-roll them out, but they're 30, 60, 90-day programs for like fast track change.
Nice, nice. You said what was that? As I love me.
As I Love Me, an
Yeah.
acronym.
What is that program?
That is a shadow work program. So it's like a lot.
Oh,
There's like
nice.
a big workbook that we go through, asking questions and then working to reframe things. But it's all about not making your shadow a wrongness. Like so, like if you have kind of like say somebody likes to be beaten or something like that, that they have that type thing, but they're embarrassed about it. Like that would be an example of a shadow aspect. They might have eroticized the trauma, and they're not going to get rid of that shadow. But what could you do to shift it and then experiencing it in a healthy way? So it's like
Hmm.
really taking a look at what are the things that you're least proud of, and how can we look at those, allow you to embrace them, and then incorporate those energies consciously into your life.
I love that. Reframe and embrace our
Yeah.
shadows.
Oh yeah, you got to. And like like we shadow work is like refining your song into the world. I look at, like the saying hollow bone, like be the hollow bone. I look at us more like flutes. And as the energy comes through us, we're playing our song into the world. Your shadow material is like things that are half blocking holes, making notes off key. And as you do your inner work, you're refining that, your song becomes more clear in the world and its impact.
I love that. I have never heard the hollow bone before. Be a
Really?
hollow bone. Yeah, I
Yeah,
haven't heard that before.
Black Elk Speaks. There's a whole book on it, and they were asking him, how do you work with all these people and not take on the sickness? He's like, I'm but a hollow bone. The energy comes from Creator through me, and from them to Creator. I'm but a hollow bone. And that's kind of like how to think with you're an empath. Be a hollow bone, let the energy go through you, not to you.
Mhm.
And that by itself is going to be a life changer.
I love it. I'm going to think of that now every time. I feel like I'm taking on people's energy. I'm a hollow bone.
Yeah.
Yes. Oracle says, it is a Lakota concept integration.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't remember if it was Lakota or what. I only know Lakota a little bit, but Black Elk Speaks is the book that I always reference. Though I've never read the book, but I reference it all the time.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much, Hank, for coming on today. This was such a lovely conversation. I know we'll have more in the future as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for everybody who joined the live or will be watching this in the future.
We can go out on a good note.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Until next time. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.